Hey everyone, this is James from Italian Polizioteschi and Jolly Reviews. Today going to be talking about a jolly, at least in my opinion, jolly. Some people might consider this a little bit more borderline, and that is Short Night of Glass Dolls. So why am I bringing on this film is it actually wasn't originally in kind of the schedule of the pre-recorded episodes that I was going to work on, but Schlock159, who I've appeared on a couple times now, invited me to talk about Aldo, Lado, this film, as well as Who Saw Her Die, on his great YouTube channel, so check that out over at Schlock159. I haven't recorded it yet, but by the time I release this episode, it will definitely be out, so go check that out. We're going to be talking posthumously a little bit about Aldo Lado, one of those kind of a little bit unsung Italian directors, one that you kind of have to go beneath the first layer of directors to get to, but I think a very, very talented one, and he did, I think, 3 really fantastic films in the 70s, as well as a couple other good ones. He worked into the 90s and 2000s, I believe. So a quick synopsis on his debut film, Short Night of Glass Dolls. A seemingly dead man tries to piece together how he ended up in this state. And I first saw this film in 2020, rewatched it again in 2022, and rewatched it for the 3rd time this year in 2024. Should and why to watch this film? Absolutely. In my opinion, this is an excellent mystery. It's a very well-rounded film that plays fairly differently than kind of your more conventional jolly. I think Aldo Lado did one of those as well in Who Saw Her Die, which I think far more fits into what people think of as the jolly in terms of kind of Dario Argento mode of a killer stalking around, a lot of point of view shots, those things. I really like Who Saw Her Die. I think this film's even better. If we think about how we look at genres or just look at things in general, there's often kind of a pyramid structure to it, where the top things at the very top of the pyramid, a lot of people have seen them. Once you go another layer down, a lot less people have seen them, but still a lot more than the tier down below. For a jolly, I think you would put Dario Argento at the top. I'm not necessarily saying he's the best or better than everyone else, just that more people have seen his films, and if you're looking up jolly, you're going to run into him. For spaghetti westerns, that's someone like Sergio Leone. Once you get down to the next level, for spaghetti westerns, that'd be like Corbucci and Salima and maybe Damiani. For jolly, you would get to kind of the 3 other masters, or acknowledged masters, Sergio Martino, Lucio Fulci, as well as Mario Bava. So I think, in my opinion, for jolly, someone like Aldo Lado would occupy kind of the next level below. So you have to go a little bit deeper. He's not necessarily seen by everyone that's seen like those directors in kind of like those top 2 tiers of the pyramid. Nonetheless, I think jolly has a particularly deep bench. Like their films that are kind of like their top 30 or 40 films, I think, are all pretty fantastic films. And I don't think I could say the same about spaghetti westerns, or at least I don't feel the same about them, where their top films are some of the best ever, the Leone films or the Corbucci films, but the films that are kind of like a couple levels down, I don't think quite hold up in the same way that the next order jolly does. And I think this film is a fantastic example of that. So yeah, in my top 20 with no caveats, so no restrictions on directors or whatsoever, I had 2 Aldo Lado films in there. So that's pretty notable and kind of tells you what I think of these 2 films. Okay, so let's get into the film too. I think, in general, again, a very, very well put together mystery, a very well rounded film in general. Of course, like a lot of these films, these jollies in particular, you can definitely nitpick it to death and find different flaws of like dummies falling without flailing or making any noise, or like point of view shots where we're kind of seeing everything from his point of view, but there are some scenes that, you know, it's unclear if he imagined it or because he's just not present in the actual scene. So you can definitely nitpick it to death, but I think overall the structure of the film and stuff like that really, really holds up. Very impressive. It feels like one of those debut films where Aldo Lado had a lot of different ideas, and so it feels very, very inspired in terms of just its overall structure and the way it cross-cuts from him kind of being just this slab in the morgue, imagining his life, and slowly coming back, cutting to kind of what he's remembering of kind of his girlfriend's disappearance and all of those things. So I think it really does slowly build. If you go in expecting kind of just someone slashing up people every 15, 20 minutes, you're not going to get that. But I think it's very intriguing for me. And I think some of these films have a tendency to lull a little bit in the middle. I think maybe Who Saw Her Die does that a little bit more. I don't feel that with this film, even though there's a little bit less going on going on here. One thing I always get a kick out of too is when some of these protagonists are American and where they have them from. In this case, we have Jean Sorel, a very French guy who appeared in a lot of different Jolly, especially a lot of ones kind of before Bird with the Crystal Plumage, but some after as well, playing a journalist from Springfield, Illinois, hometown of Abraham Lincoln. I was like, Springfield, Illinois. Totally comes out of left field. The other one that I really remember is Eyeball, where they're from Burlington, Vermont, hometown of Bernie Sanders. Very, very bizarre as well. So those are things that I just kind of enjoy that are kind of a little bit of the wallpaper on the film. So let's see what else here. I think another thing that really stands out about this film is the setting. It's set in the Soviet bloc, or at least feels very, very Eastern bloc. This is filmed in Prague. Originally, it's supposed to be more of a mafia plot, filmed in Sardinia, so in kind of like that island in southern Italy. But this, which would have been a completely different feel, a lot more sunny. This one reminds me a lot of All the Colors of the Dark in its structure, just in terms of like the dark gloominess of that film. They even have like kind of somewhat similar kind of sex cults in it as well. So that part is kind of interesting. This film came before All the Colors of the Dark, I believe. Ernesto Gastaldi was involved with this at some point, but I think he didn't end up getting any credits on it, so I'm not sure how much of his ideas they actually used. So that's an interesting connection that I think pretty much immediately comes to mind when it does. But it does a really good job of showing kind of this Eastern Bloc country. Just very, very dark, very unsettled. People kind of have this sort of collective hypnosis going around, not just in the Club 99, but in all just the city in general. People are like watching musical performers, but it's very listless. People don't have necessarily a lot of energy, so it has this very unsettling feeling, and it just feels a little bit like a doomed search from the beginning. So there's a lot of dread and atmosphere built into it. So I really think that stuff works very, very well here. One of the reviewers I saw on Letterboxd, Felipe Furtado, who I'm a fan of, he talks a bit about how this fits really nicely into kind of the paranoid thrillers of the 1970s, many of which are more political than this, or at least more overtly political. And I would agree, this film does a really good job. It's kind of like this very paranoid narrative where you don't know necessarily who's in on it, but you know that there are definitely a lot of people in on it, and like even the people not in on it are kind of zombies going through the motions here. So I think that part, all of that stuff works together really, really well into sort of the sinister plot. His search really does seem doomed from the get-go. There are also just a series of great images in the film too. We have Barbara Bach shoved in the fridge, which I think is something more imagined. The look of the film too, as well, just kind of the darkness, but as well as like just the gliding camera here and there. One thing that's interesting too is apparently a lot of people compared this film to Eyes Wide Shut. A comparison that did not immediately come to mind, but it doesn't take far to see kind of the similarities that we have there in terms of just like what the actual paranoid conspiracy is. I also came to mind Hereditary. So these are like big, heavy-hitting films, far more well-known than A Short Night of Glass Doll. So it's interesting. I do wonder if any of those directors, certainly All the Colors of Dark's creator, were familiar with this, but I do wonder if Ari Aster or Kubrick or someone had run into this at some point and it had some sort of influence on them. You also have a great Morricone score. Lado worked with Morricone a couple times. He worked with him in this as well as Who Saw Her Die. This is definitely one of those Morricone scores that's a little bit more dissonant, which really does contribute, again, to that feeling of unsettling dread. In the end, it's a very, very somber film, and I think depending on if you like that kind of feeling, I think you might really enjoy this film or not. I think if you're looking for something a little more energetic and stupid in terms of like body counts and stuff like that, which, I can be in the mood for too, you'd probably be better off with a little bit of a different Jolly. It's kind of a very... this film would be kind of on the polar opposite end of something like Stage Fright. Another film that I really like, but I think is just operating on kind of a different level in terms of what it's going for. Okay, so who won the film? Gonna give it to Aldo Lado. I think in general the supporting cast is very good here, but yeah, as well as John Sorrell. But I think the direction of this film particularly stands out, and just the overall feel of the film. Definitely a jolly that I would strongly recommend people check out. Double feature. I don't think you need to look further than his follow-up film, A Year Later, Who Saw Her Die. Just a very nice, jolly double feature. Who Saw Her Die, a little bit pretty different. Venetian set, great use of setting in that film as well. Some great fog and whatnot. And that's kind of like the Italian jolly version of Don't Look Now, a film that does have kind of jolly vibes anyways. So, yeah, that's what I would recommend. I will give this film an 8 out of 10. Really, really solid film. So, yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Let me know what you think of Short Night of Glass Dolls. Let me know where you think it fits into Aldo Lado's filmography. I think he really did 3 fantastic films. This film, Who Saw Her Die, and Night Train Murders. I'm a big fan of that film, too. That's kind of his Last House on the Left. I'd strongly recommend that. But he has also done a lot of other films as well. He did a jolly in the 90s on TV that I'm forgetting that I did like quite a bit too. He did Born a Winner, which is kind of a Joe D'Alessandro car race movie. That one's fun too. So anyways, I'm rambling now, so thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all next time. Cheers.